share preference now. So in the single game activity, in game activity, when we send the points to game over activity, and here what we need to do is store the points. How do we do this? So create an object shared preference. I'm going to call it preference, and it's going to be equal a get shared preference. Because we are inside an activity, we can invoke this method. So we can call get shared preference. We need a name for this preference. This is going to be my preference for now. We can have different preference, and we need to specify here a mode. You need to name this. We are going to use the mode private, which is this preference are private for this application. Okay, this is always like this. It's always the same. Every time you request the preference, you can use it like this. Now, on the preference, we can store as many information as we want. So, what are we going to store? We need to store the name of the user and the points. How are we going to store this? So, I'm going to create a basic structure, which is going to be like name and points. And then I'm going to save this with the end of a line. So whenever we are writing this in the text view, this is how it's going to be stored on the preference, and this is how it's going to be shown on the text view. Because Android is going to read this like an end of line, so it's going to start a new line. This is a very basic structure. We are not going to sort the scores. You are always going to see first the last scores. If we wanted to sort the score, we will have to use Java comparators, or we will have to store the information in a database, which is very complex for us at the moment. So let's do the simple way. This is a way to store information on Android, and let's going to do it like this. I'm going to leave that comment as a reference. So I need to get the edit text with the name. I'm going to take a look at the view again. Activity game over has an edit text name. I'm going to call it, and the points. Okay. And it has a button. So the button, when I save the scores, need one click, which is going to be save score. So this is going to be one method execute on game over activity. So public void save score from the view. So every time I click this button, I have to read the value from the edit text and save it on preference. And I also need to save the name with the points. Okay, so first let's do it by part. Edit text, edit text name, casting. So the name is edit text get text to a string, and we need the points here. How can we get the point? We have the point when we start the activity, because the point will be on the extra. So then we are going to create a variable here, for example int points, and whenever I create the activity, I am going to initialize that variable with the points. Because this is a class variable, Now I can retrieve that variable from this method. So now I have here the name, which is coming from the edit text, and the point, which is in a class variable, in a member variable. So I just need to save it on the preference. I have the object preference, and I'm going to edit this preference. What do I need to edit a preference? I need to use an object called share preference editor. This is the way to write on the preference. And you get this with preference get edit. The preference.edit. The editor is an object that we use to write on them. To read from them is just easier. We just need to get the value from the preference. But to write is a bit more complex because we need to edit. And on the editor is where we put any value. In this case, it's going to be a string. We need a key. The key is going to be scores, and the value is going to be the name, also one white space, also the number of the points, also one white space and points, and to finish, as you know, at end of line. So this way we will store the things like this, with one space. Okay. Now we just need, when we are using the editor, finally when we finish writing on it, we need to call editor.commit to commit the change. If you don't do this, the information won't be stored. Okay. So this is working fine now. We are just going to test this and go to the score screen to read this information now. At the moment, we are only storing one value. I'm going to lose the game directly. I'm going to insert my name. I'm going to save the score. Now, if I go to read the preference, next time on the next screen, I should have it. Okay. Note that at the moment, every time we write the value, we just write one value. So what are we doing? We only have one value and we are writing it every time again. So we are updating the value. We are not storing a list of values. For that, we will have to read the previous value and add the new line. So we will end up having more than one line. But first, let's go to the score screen and see how to read from preference.